Hello, everyone. My name is Nova Campbell. I'm 40 years old, and I live with my boyfriend and my two daughters in a three-bedroom house in suburban Chicago. Even though 2 years have passed, I still can't forget what happened to my oldest daughter, Mia. Not because time didn't help. It did. Mia grew. Her face cleared. Her confidence came back like sunlight after a long winter. But because that day, that one birthday party, was the day I finally saw my family's real faces. The people I used to call Mom, Dad, and Laura. It was mid-September 2023. My mother, Marion, called a week before her birthday, her voice bright and commanding like she was reading a script she'd practiced in the mirror. Big party, she announced. Almost 30 people. Relatives, neighbors, close friends. Everyone's coming. So you're coming too, Nova. Don't make this difficult. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. Still, I told myself it was just her way. My mother had always loved control the way some people love sugar. Too much, and always reaching for more. So we prepared. My boyfriend, Ethan, helped the girls pick out outfits. He's the kind of man who folds laundry like it matters, who listens when a kid is telling a story that doesn't make sense yet. Not perfect, but steady, safe. Mia and my younger daughter, Jenna, who was 7 at the time, spent the day before the party in the kitchen with me, making a birthday cake for Grandma Marion. White frosting, little decorative flowers. Jenna insisted on a few extra sprinkles because sprinkles are happiness. And Mia, quieter than usual, piped the flowers with careful hands. We also bought my mother an expensive scarf because Ethan said, if you're going to keep trying with her, at least try with class. The next day we drove out to my parents' house. It was a 45-minute drive, and the car felt like two different worlds. In the front, Jenna talked nonstop about school, about a classmate who brought a lizard in a plastic container, about how her teacher said her handwriting looked like dancing worms, which Jenna treated like a compliment. In the back seat, Mia was silent. Mia was 11. She was in that in-between stage where childhood hasn't fully let go, but the world has already started asking you to be brave. Puberty hit her hard. Her face had broken out with acne. Normal, temporary, the kind of thing adults dismiss because they've forgotten what it feels like to have your own reflection betray you. But Mia didn't dismiss it. She carried it like a secret shame. I noticed the way she angled her face toward the window, letting her hair fall forward like a curtain. I glanced at Ethan and he gave me that look. She's struggling. So at a red light, I turned in my seat, trying to make my voice casual. Mia, I said gently, what's going on in that head of yours? You've been quiet. She didn't answer right away. Then, in a voice so small I almost missed it, she whispered, I'm scared people will look at me and laugh because of my face. I felt something twist in my chest. Before I could respond, Ethan turned slightly, careful not to make her feel trapped under attention. Hey, he said softly, nobody's going to laugh at you, sweetheart. And if someone does, that says everything about them and nothing about you. From the front passenger seat, Jenna leaned back like she had been waiting for her cue. She threw her arms around Mia's shoulders and planted a quick kiss on her cheek, loud, dramatic, like a tiny superhero sealing a promise. Mia startled, then let out a breath. Her mouth twitched into a small smile. For a few minutes after that, the tension eased. I watched Ethan reach into the back and gently squeeze Mia's hand for a second. Just a silent, I'm here. And I remember thinking, we're okay, we're solid. We're walking into that house as a team. I had no idea that within minutes my daughter would be insulted by my own blood in a way I would never forget. We arrived around 5:30 p.m., half an hour earlier than my mother had announced. I've always had a habit of being on time. Sometimes early. It's how I was raised. Show respect. Don't be a burden. The funny part is, my mother raised me that way, and then spent the rest of my life treating my effort like it was expected, not appreciated. The moment we stepped inside, something felt off. It was small, just a shift in the air, a glance held a little too long. My mother's eyes flicked over us, and when they landed on Mia, they did something that made my skin prickle. Not warmth, not delight. Assessment, like Mia was a stain on a white tablecloth. Marion moved forward and hugged both girls. And for a split second, I almost relaxed. Then she bent down and kissed Jenna's cheek, right on the smile, then straightened up and only hugged Mia. No kiss. No cheek-to-cheek affection, like she'd done 100 times when Mia was little. Just distance. It happened in seconds, but I saw it. Mia felt it. Ethan felt it too. His jaw tightened, like he was biting back words. I couldn't stop myself. Mom, I asked, keeping my voice even, why did you kiss Jenna and not Mia? Marion's face shifted immediately. Cold, sharp, like I'd accused her of a crime. She held my gaze for a few seconds, the kind of silence that feels like punishment. Then she said firmly, "Mia is grown now. She's not little anymore. A hug is enough." And just like that, she turned away to greet the guests who had arrived early, leaving us standing there like we were furniture she'd decided to rearrange. I looked down at Mia. Her eyes dropped, her shoulders sank. The shame didn't hit her like a wave. It seeped in like ink in water, spreading quietly until it filled her. Ethan stepped closer to her. He didn't say anything. He just put a hand on her back, steady and protective. I wanted to call my mother back. I wanted to demand she explain what grown had to do with affection. But there were guests. There was music. There was that loud, fake party energy that makes you swallow your pain so you don't ruin someone else's moment. So I did what I'd always done in my family. I swallowed it. We walked into the living room. I greeted relatives. Ethan carried the cake box carefully like it contained something fragile, which in a way it did. My mother's gift table was already crowded with bags and cards. We placed our cake down. We set the scarf in its elegant box beside it. And then I saw Mia drift to the edge of the room, alone. Her hands kept floating up toward her face like she wanted to hide it, erase it, peel it off and become someone else. My heart ached in that quiet, helpless way a parent knows too well. From across the room, my cousin Sandra, always the kind one, the listener, walked over and started chatting with Mia. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Mia's shoulders loosen. I saw her smile, small but real. It gave me a sliver of relief. Then Aunt Martha, my mother's older sister, patted my shoulder. "Haven't seen you in a while," she said softly. "You look stressed." I forced a smile. "Work's been heavy. I'm okay." She nodded like she understood more than I was saying. And all around us, the party grew louder. More guests arrived, more laughter, more clinking glasses. But I couldn't stop replaying that moment at the door. My mother kissing Jenna like she was sweet and worthy, and avoiding Mia like she was something else. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself to get through the night. Around 6 p.m., I got up to use the bathroom. I walked toward the hallway, passing the kitchen, and that's when I heard my mother's voice, and Laura's. They didn't know I was there. They didn't know I could hear every word. And the way Laura laughed, sharp, gleeful, made my stomach drop before I even understood why. I slowed my steps, my heart beginning to pound, as if my body already knew what my mind wasn't ready to accept. And then Laura said my name, like a joke, like I was the punchline. I stopped completely, frozen in the shadow of the doorway. Because whatever was happening in that kitchen, it wasn't harmless. It was about to change everything. I stood there in the dim edge of the hallway, half hidden by the wall, listening to my mother and my sister like they were strangers wearing familiar faces. Laura's voice floated out first, light, amused. "Did Nova make you mad earlier?" she asked. There was a pause, the kind where you can almost hear someone rolling their eyes. Then my mother sighed, and that sigh carried something ugly inside it. Not stress, not exhaustion, annoyance. "That's right," Marion said. "Nova asked me why I didn't kiss Mia's cheek." Laura let out a laugh, loud enough that it bounced off the kitchen tile. "Oh my God," she said, dripping sarcasm. "Is Nova serious? Who would dare kiss Mia's face looking like that?" For a second, my brain didn't process it. It was like my body rejected the words before my mind could accept them, like swallowing something poisonous and gagging it back up. Then the meaning landed, and my blood went hot. I gripped the edge of the wall so hard my nails bit into my palm. I could feel my pulse in my wrists, my throat, my ears. I expected my mother to shut it down, to say, "Laura, stop," to defend her granddaughter. Instead, Marion giggled. A giggle, like she was a teenager sharing gossip. "That's right," she said. "Her face is full of acne. I feel scared when I see those pimples." I swear I felt something inside me fracture. Not heartbreak, something harder, something colder. My sister continued, her voice dropping slightly like she was telling a secret that made her feel powerful. "I'd rather kiss a dog's face than Mia's face," Laura said, laughing. "I'd probably have to stop eating for a week if I accidentally kissed that acne-covered face." And then came the sound that made my vision blur for a second. Their laughter. Together. My mother and my sister laughing about my child, an 11-year-old girl, like she was disgusting. Like she was less than human. In that moment, I understood something I'd never wanted to understand. They weren't just being careless. They meant it. My mother lowered her voice, conspiratorial and thrilled with her own cruelty. "Keep it down," Marion whispered. "It wouldn't be good if Nova heard." And Laura laughed again, even louder, like the risk of getting caught made it funnier. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight, like something wild was clawing at the inside of my ribs. I didn't plan what I did next. I didn't count to 10. I didn't breathe. I stepped into the kitchen doorway. Time slowed the way it does right before an accident. My mother and Laura were still smiling when they turned and saw me, still mid-laugh, like their faces hadn't gotten the message that this was no longer a joke. Their laughter died instantly. Silence fell so fast it felt like someone had slammed a door. Laura's eyes widened. My mother's mouth tightened. I stared at them, breathing hard through my nose, my hands clenched so tight they hurt. "What did you just say?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded flat, dangerously calm. My mother straightened her shoulders like she was preparing for battle. "Were you eavesdropping?" she snapped. The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. I took one step closer. "Yes," I said without flinching. "And I remember you teaching me not to eavesdrop. I also remember you teaching me not to talk about people behind their backs." Marion blinked, like she wasn't used to me answering back. I didn't let her recover. "And I remember you teaching me to respect others," I continued, my voice sharp now, "even if they don't look perfect." My mother's face flushed red, the veins in her forehead pulsing. "Today is my birthday," she hissed. "Are you planning to turn my birthday into an argument?" Laura jumped in fast, like she could smooth it over. "Mom's right," she said, forcing calm, though her voice trembled. "We can talk about this later." Later. As if my daughter's humiliation could be scheduled. As if cruelty could be postponed, filed away, dismissed. I turned to Laura. "What did you say about my daughter?" I asked, each word clipped. "Repeat it." Laura's eyes flicked to my mother, searching for backup. Then she lifted her chin like she was daring me to do something. "I don't remember," she said. A lie, a coward's dodge. I let out a laugh, short, humorless. It startled both of them. Because it wasn't laughter. It was the sound of something snapping clean in half. I took a breath that tasted like metal. "I'll let it go," I said slowly, "if you apologize to Mia, right now, in front of everyone, in front of her." My mother looked at me like I'd demanded her kneel in the street. "What?" she barked. "You want me to apologize to an 11-year-old child? You've lost your mind." And that hurt in a way I didn't expect. Not because I needed her approval, but because it confirmed, without any room for denial, that my mother saw my child's feelings as disposable, that she'd rather protect her pride than protect her granddaughter. Laura saw my mother's anger and immediately fed it, the way she always did, like their relationship was built on them taking turns being cruel. She crossed her arms and smirked. "I think Mom and I are right," she said. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. If there's anyone to blame, blame your daughter's face for being so ugly." The word ugly struck like a slap. I stepped closer until we were inches apart. "What did you say?" I asked. Laura didn't back down. Maybe because my mother was there. Maybe because she'd gotten away with too much for too long. She screamed right into my face, spit flying, eyes burning with hatred. "Your daughter's face is disgusting," she shouted. "And I'm not saying anything wrong. I'd rather kiss a dog's face than have to kiss your daughter's face." The kitchen went quiet in my ears, like the world had switched off sound so I could hear only my heartbeat. I thought of Mia in the living room, trying to stand tall, trying to be brave, trying not to show how much she wanted to disappear. I thought of Jenna kissing her cheek in the car. I thought of Ethan squeezing Mia's hand like a promise. And then I saw my sister, grown woman, aunt, family, spitting cruelty like it was entertainment. Something in me moved before my brain approved it. My hand came up. A sharp crack echoed through the kitchen. Laura's head snapped slightly to the side, and for a split second my own body went cold with shock at what I'd done. My mother screamed, voice breaking. "Nova, stop, right now!" Laura clutched her cheek, her eyes wide with pain and disbelief. "How dare you hit me?" she shrieked. Footsteps thundered toward the kitchen, the sound of people rushing, whispering, gasps. The doorway filled with faces, relatives, neighbors, friend. My father, Martin, pushed through, older now, but fueled by anger like it was a drug. He pointed at me like I was a criminal. "Are you trying to ruin your mother's birthday?" he roared. Laura's husband, Owen, rushed to her side, wrapping his arms around her like she was the victim of some random attack, not the author of her own disaster. Ethan appeared behind the crowd, moving fast. And then, my daughters. Mia stood behind Ethan, her face pale, her eyes already wet. Jenna clung to Ethan's hand, confused and frightened. Ethan looked at me, then Laura, then my mother. His voice came out tight. "Nova," he said low. "What happened?" I turned and saw Mia's expression, like she could tell, just from the energy in the room, that something had been said about her. And I knew I couldn't lie. Not to protect adults. Not to save a party. Not when my daughter was the one bleeding inside. I swallowed hard and said it. "Laura told Mom," I said, voice shaking with rage, "that she'd rather kiss a dog than kiss Mia's face." The kitchen fell into a silence so heavy it pressed on everyone's lungs. People stared at Laura. At my mother. At Mia. Mia's face went from pale to bright red in an instant, shame climbing up her neck like a fire. She dropped her gaze and brought both hands up to cover her cheeks, like she could hide her whole existence behind her fingers. Ethan moved immediately, one step, then another, placing himself slightly in front of Mia without making it obvious. Like a shield. Aunt Martha, my mother's sister, was the first one to break the silence. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "Marion," she asked slowly, "did you really say something like that about your own granddaughter?" My mother's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in her life, she didn't have an answer ready. Laura started crying. Fast, dramatic tears. "My sister hit me," she sobbed. "She hit me because I told the truth." Owen pointed at me, face twisted with anger. "I'm going to sue you for assault," he yelled. "You're going to pay for this." The room erupted into whispers, people talking over each other, some in disbelief, some in disgust. Mia pressed her face into Ethan's side, shoulders trembling. Jenna hugged Ethan's leg, staring up at the adults like she'd wandered into a storm without an umbrella. And in the middle of all that chaos, I looked at my mother, my father, my sister, my blood, and I realized something with absolute clarity. They were choosing Laura. They were choosing pride. They were choosing cruelty over my child. A coldness spread through me, replacing the shaky rage. Not calm. Not peace. Decision. Because if they wanted to pretend Mia didn't deserve respect, then I was done pretending they deserved access to us. I glanced at Mia. Her eyes were red, but she looked up at me anyway, like she was searching for one thing. "Are you going to protect me?" My voice came out steady as stone. "Do you think you can insult my daughter without paying a price?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm going to show you what consequences look like." My father's eyes narrowed, suspicious. "What are you planning to do?" he demanded. I didn't answer him. Instead, I looked at Laura, really looked at her, watching her hide behind Owen's arms while still wearing that faint, stubborn defiance. And I made the choice that would cut my family in half. I raised my hand, drawing everyone's attention. "Wait," I said, "don't leave yet." The room stilled. I let my gaze sweep over the shocked faces. Then I spoke the sentence that made my mother's expression finally crack with fear. "I'm going to let Laura fulfill her wish." For a heartbeat, no one moved. My words hung in the air like a threat no one quite understood yet. Laura's crying slowed. She peeked out from Owen's arms, her brows knitting together in confusion. What does that mean?" she demanded, trying to sound brave. I didn't answer. I took one step forward, then another. The movement alone sent a ripple of panic through the room. "Nova," my mother snapped, her voice suddenly sharp with alarm. "Don't you dare do anything stupid." But it was too late for warnings. I reached Laura before Owen could fully react. Everything happened fast after that, like a glass shattering in slow motion. I bent down and, in one decisive movement, hoisted Laura up over my shoulder. She screamed instantly, a high-pitched sound that cut through the room. "Put me down!" she shrieked, pounding her fists against my back. "Nova, you've lost your mind!" My mother's scream joined hers. My father roared my name like he was trying to summon authority out of thin air. Owen lunged forward, reaching for my arm, but before he could grab me, hands reached out from the crowd. Mr. Bruce, Aunt Martha's husband, 2 other neighbors. They formed a wall between Owen and me, not aggressively, just firmly. "Let her go," Mr. Bruce said quietly, one hand on Owen's chest. "This needs to end." I didn't look back. I walked, through the stunned guests. Past the living room where the cake still sat untouched, white frosting perfect and untouched, like a cruel joke. Out the front door. Laura's screams echoed behind me, mixing with my parents' frantic shouts. "Nova, put her down right now," my mother cried. "If you hurt your sister, I swear," my father yelled, his threat unfinished and useless. Outside, the evening air hit my face, cool and grounding. The lawn stretched ahead of me, leading to Mr. Bruce's house next door. Every step felt surreal, like I'd stepped out of my own body and was watching someone else walk with my sister slung over her shoulder. Laura kept thrashing, her nails scratching at my back through my clothes. It hurt, but not enough to matter. Because every time doubt crept in, another image replaced it. Mia covering her face. Mia shrinking. Mia believing, because of them, that she deserved it. Behind me, the door burst open again. The crowd spilled out onto the lawn. My parents, Owen, relatives, neighbors. A chorus of voices shouting my name, begging, threatening, pleading. Then I heard Ethan. "Nova!" His voice cut through the noise, not angry, not commanding. Scared. He reached me just as I stepped onto Bruce's lawn. He didn't touch me right away. He looked at my face first. And I saw it in his eyes. The worry, the understanding, and the fear of what this would cost us. "Nova," he said quietly, "if you do this, There's no fixing it afterward. I stopped walking. Laura was still on my shoulder, breathing hard now, her earlier fury giving way to real panic. I turned slightly so Ethan could see my face clearly. If they apologize to Mia, I said, my voice low but steady, I'll stop. Right now. That's their last chance. It wasn't a threat. It was an offer. My mother rushed forward, her pride warring with terror. Fine, she shouted. Fine, I'll apologize. She pushed past the others and marched toward Mia, who stood beside Ethan, clinging to his sleeve. Marion stopped in front of her granddaughter. For a moment, I almost hoped. Then she spoke. I'm sorry, she said quickly, stiffly. Okay, I'm sorry. There was no warmth. No remorse. Just words thrown like coins at a toll booth. But I nodded anyway. Laura, I said, your turn. Laura stiffened on my shoulder. No, she screamed immediately. I will not apologize. I didn't lie. That was it. The final thread snapped. I met Ethan's eyes one last time. He didn't try to stop me again. He just closed his eyes briefly, like he was bracing himself. I turned to Mr. Bruce. Let Max out, I said. Bruce didn't hesitate. He walked to the side gate and opened it. A second later, Max, a large black Labrador, trotted out happily, tail wagging, completely unaware that he'd just become part of a family reckoning. Laura saw the dog and understood. Her screaming turned hysterical. You're insane, she shrieked. You can't do this. Put me down. I didn't respond. I shifted my grip and held her steady. Max approached, curious and calm, sniffing the air. I lowered Laura just enough so her face was level with his. My voice dropped, cold, controlled. You said you'd rather kiss a dog's face than my daughter's, I said. I'm just helping you keep your word. For a brief moment, no more than a few seconds, I pressed her face against Max's. Nothing violent. Nothing graphic. Just the reality of her own cruelty staring back at her. Laura's scream shattered into sobs. My mother collapsed to the ground behind us. Enough, she screamed, her voice breaking. Enough. I'll do anything. Just stop. I loosened my grip, but didn't let go. Laura apologizes, I said, properly, to Mia. Laura was shaking now. Rage, fear, humiliation, all tangled together. Fine, she screamed hoarsely. I'm sorry. I tightened my hold slightly. To my daughter, I said, and mean it. Laura's shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of her like water from a cracked cup. She looked at Mia, really looked at her for the first time that night. Her voice came out small and raw. Mia, I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have said those things. You didn't deserve it. Mia didn't respond. She didn't need to. The apology wasn't for forgiveness. It was for truth. I let Laura go. She stumbled backward into Owen's arms, sobbing, pointing at me through tears. I'm going to sue you, she screamed. You'll regret this. I looked at her without emotion. Do whatever you want, I said. Just remember, you started this. Then I turned away. I walked straight to Ethan, to Mia, to Jenna. Ethan wrapped an arm around both girls. I took Mia's hand, feeling how cold and small it was in mine. Let's go home, I said gently. As we walked back toward the car, I glanced once over my shoulder. My parents stood frozen on the lawn. Laura clung to Owen like a wrecked thing. The guests whispered, stared, shook their heads. That night, as the engine hummed and the streetlights passed in slow rhythm, none of us spoke. But for the first time since I'd heard those words in the kitchen, my mind was quiet, because I knew one thing for certain. No one would ever make my daughter feel small again. Not even family. The drive home felt unreal. Streetlights slid past the windows in slow, silent streaks, like we were moving through a world that didn't quite belong to us anymore. No one spoke. Jenna had curled into herself in the back seat, her thumb hovering near her mouth the way it only did when she was scared. Ethan reached back and rested his hand on her knee, steady and warm. Mia sat beside her, staring straight ahead. She didn't cry. That worried me more than if she had. Her silence wasn't empty. It was heavy. The kind of quiet that comes when a child is trying to understand why adults, especially family, can be so cruel. When we pulled into our driveway, I felt like I was stepping into a different life. The door closed behind us, sealing out the chaos like it had happened in another universe. Ethan ushered Jenna toward the bathroom to help her wash up. I stood in the living room, keys still in my hand, heart pounding now that the adrenaline had nowhere to go. That's when I heard soft footsteps. I turned and saw Mia standing in the hallway, holding Jenna's hand. Ethan followed a step behind them, giving her space. Mia walked up to me slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to take up room. Then she looked up. Her eyes were still red, but clear. Mom, she whispered, her voice barely there. Thank you. That was it. 2 words. And they hit harder than everything that came before. I dropped my keys and pulled her into my arms, holding her like I was trying to stitch something back together. I will never let anyone hurt you like that again, I whispered into her hair. Not ever. Not even people who share my blood. She nodded against my shoulder, hugging me back. Tight, desperate, trusting. Ethan watched us quietly, his jaw tight. Later that night, after both girls were finally asleep, he sat beside me on the couch. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock. They're going to hate us, he said softly. I nodded. I know. He looked at me carefully. What you did tonight, I understand why, but it changed things. I know, I said again. He waited, sensing there was more. This isn't over, I added. He leaned back slightly. Nova. I'm not going to hurt them, I said calmly, but I'm not protecting them anymore either. That's when I told him. About the money. About the $80,000 I lent Laura and Owen back in 2018 to start their business. Money they'd never repaid, not even after promising again and again. About the $200,000 I gave my parents in 2021 when their farm nearly collapsed after the pandemic. The money that saved 3 generations of land. The money they never paid back. I had contracts, I said quietly. I did everything legally. I just never thought I'd have to use them. Ethan exhaled slowly. Are you going to? Yes. The word came out steady. Not angry. Not vengeful. Certain. The next morning, I sat across from Matthew Reynolds, a civil litigation attorney, with calm eyes and an even calmer voice. For 2 hours, I told him everything. The loans, the contracts, the missed deadlines, the party, the humiliation. He read through the documents carefully, nodding occasionally, making notes. Finally, he looked up at me. You have a very strong case, he said. Both loans are legally enforceable. The repayment deadlines passed years ago. I swallowed. So I can recover everything? Yes, he replied. If they don't cooperate, the court will force it. I signed the paperwork with a hand that didn't shake. But when I walked out of his office, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Because suing your family doesn't feel like winning. It feels like closing a door you once hoped would never lock. 3 days later, the storm arrived. Debt notices went out. And that same evening, at 7:00 p.m., my doorbell rang. Again, and again, and again. Through the window, I saw my father's car parked behind Owen's SUV. When I opened the door, they stood there, my parents, Laura and Owen, faces tight with rage. No greetings. No hesitation. My mother pointed at me like I'd committed a crime. You're ungrateful, she screamed. After everything we've done for you. Laura joined in immediately. You're evil. Who does this to their own family? Owen said nothing, but his fists were clenched, his posture coiled. I met their eyes, one by one. If you don't have the money, I said evenly, sell the house. You have 30 days. After that, I file in civil court, and you'll pay legal fees too. My father stepped forward, his voice low and venomous. You'll regret this someday. I didn't raise my voice. What I regret, I said calmly, is ever lending money to people who thought kindness was weakness. They stared at me like strangers, because that's what we were now. I stepped back and opened the door wider. Leave, I said. If you don't, I call 911. They left without another word. 2 years have passed since that night. Mia is 13 now, confident, radiant, her acne long gone. Jenna is 9, fearless, climbing everything she can reach. My parents sold the farm to repay the loan. Laura paid me back too. I don't know how, and I don't care. We don't speak. Some people say I went too far. Some say I was cruel. I don't argue, because they weren't there. They didn't hear what was said about my daughter, and they didn't see the moment I realized that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who taught us what love was supposed to be. And sometimes protecting your child means walking away forever. 2 years later, people still talk about that night. Not about the birthday cake. Not about my mother turning 65. They talk about the lawn. They talk about the dog. They talk about how I went too far. I hear it sometimes, from distant relatives, from old neighbors, from strangers online, who caught fragments of the story after it spread like a quiet scandal through our community. She forced her sister to kiss a dog. That's abuse. No matter what was said, family doesn't do that to family. When I hear those words, I don't argue. I don't defend myself. Because I've learned something important in the past 2 years. People who weren't there will always judge the ending, while ignoring what made it inevitable. They didn't see my daughter's hands shaking as she tried to hide her face. They didn't hear my sister's voice dripping with disgust. They didn't hear my mother laugh. They weren't there when an 11-year-old learned that even blood could look at her like she was something shameful. So I let them talk, because I know what peace looks like now. Mia is 13. She walks into rooms without shrinking. She looks people in the eye. She laughs, loudly sometimes, and doesn't apologize for it. Last month, she stood in front of the mirror before school, adjusting her hair, and said casually, "Mom, do you think this outfit makes me look confident?" Not ugly, not wrong. Confident. I had to turn away so she wouldn't see my eyes fill with tears. Jenna is 9 now, fearless, restless, climbing onto the backyard shed just to see the world from above. Ethan caught her halfway up the ladder and pretended to scold her while smiling like a proud idiot. As for Ethan, he stayed. Not because I was right, not because I was wrong, but because he saw exactly why I did what I did. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and the girls are asleep, he'll mention my parents. "They're getting older," he'll say carefully. "Do you ever wonder if you'll regret it?" And I always pause before answering. Because the truth is complicated. I don't hate my parents. I don't wake up wishing harm on Laura. What I feel is something colder and cleaner. Distance. They sold the farm. The land that held 3 generations of memories now belongs to strangers. Laura repaid her debt. My parents repaid theirs. Legally, financially, we're even. Emotionally, we're worlds apart. We live in the same city, breathe the same air, pass the same intersections. But we don't exist in each other's lives. We are strangers with shared DNA. And here is the part people don't like to hear. I sleep peacefully. Not because I won, not because I punished anyone, but because my daughters learned something that night, something far more important than family loyalty. They learned that love protects, that cruelty has consequences, that they never have to accept humiliation just to keep the peace. And they learned that their mother will stand between them and the world, even when the world wears a familiar face. If you ask me now whether I would do things differently, I don't know. Maybe there was a gentler path. Maybe there was a version of that night where my daughter wasn't scarred, where apologies came freely, where laughter never turned cruel. But that wasn't the family I had, and I refused to let my child pay the price for pretending otherwise. So tell me, if your daughter stood there, humiliated by the very people who were supposed to love her, what would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet? Would you have chosen peace over protection? Or would you, like me, have decided that some doors don't close gently? They slam shut. And sometimes, that sound is the beginning of peace.